At 47 years old, Judge Faith Jenkins has finally had enough. After years of living in the shadow of what seemed like a perfect marriage, she is now exposing the shocking lies her husband, Kenny Lattimore, has been hiding. What was once thought to be a fairy tale is now crumbling into a nightmare. In this explosive reveal, we uncover the jaw-dropping truth that has left fans speechless. Stay tuned, because what you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about Judge Faith and her marriage. Faith Jenkins, a respected TV personality, has long been admired for her sharp legal mind and poised public image. As a tough, no-nonsense figure on the bench, she built a career founded on integrity, fairness, and professionalism. But her personal life, once thought to be untouchable, almost too perfect, was hiding a darkness no one could have predicted. For years, Faith and Kenny Lattimore appeared to be the ideal couple. They were relationship goals personified, attending glamorous events, sharing affectionate moments on social media, and openly professing their love. To the public, they were the epitome of perfection. But beneath the surface, cracks were slowly starting to form. Now, after years of living in the illusion of a perfect relationship, Faith is pulling back the curtain, revealing the shocking truth about their marriage's breakdown. A breakdown no one saw coming. This is the story of lies, betrayal, and manipulation that nobody expected. When Faith and Kenny first met, their connection was undeniable. It was as though they were two halves of a whole. Faith, a prominent judge on divorce court, had made a name for herself by offering expert legal insight on the complicated issues of marriage and relationships. Meanwhile, Kenny, a successful R&B singer, brought a soulful, gentle energy that seemed to balance out Faith's strong, authoritative presence. Together, they were a power couple, admired by fans and peers alike. But what no one could see was the brewing storm beneath their picture-perfect exterior. What seemed like an ideal relationship quickly began to fracture, and Faith was blindsided by what she would later discover. As their marriage progressed, Faith began to question everything she thought she knew. Was it really as perfect as it seemed? Was their love story just a well-crafted illusion? What Faith uncovered was nothing short of devastating. Behind closed doors, Kenny's lies had been festering for months, maybe even years. These weren't just minor misunderstandings or harmless secrets. No, the betrayal was deeper, more sinister. Faith began to uncover a web of lies that shook her to her core. The man she thought she knew, her partner, her confidant, was hiding shocking truths from her. And when she finally pulled back the layers, the extent of Kenny's deceit was staggering. What were these lies? They weren't just about small misunderstandings. They involved the very foundations of their marriage: trust, fidelity, and respect. Over time, Faith discovered that Kenny had been hiding serious secrets from her. Emotional betrayals, hidden finances, and even actions that made her question his commitment to their relationship. These lies went beyond typical relationship struggles. They were betrayals that cut deep, leaving a scar on everything they had built together. But it wasn't just the lies that hurt. The betrayal was also emotional. For someone like Faith, who had always prided herself on honesty and integrity, this was the ultimate personal betrayal. The emotional toll it took on her was immeasurable. When we think of betrayal in a marriage, we often think of infidelity. But sometimes the most devastating form of betrayal isn't physical. It's emotional, mental, and psychological. And that's exactly what Faith uncovered. The final straw came when Faith realized that Kenny hadn't just been dishonest. He had emotionally distanced himself from her in ways that were impossible to ignore. The man she loved had become someone unrecognizable. The manipulation, the coldness, the refusal to take responsibility, it was all too much for Faith to bear. But the deepest wound came when she discovered that Kenny had been confiding in someone else, someone close to her, about their marriage. This third party wasn't just a confidant. They had been feeding Kenny ideas about how to manipulate Faith's emotions and undermine her confidence. In essence, they had been actively working to destroy the foundation of Faith's trust, turning their marriage into a toxic cycle of deceit. Faith was blindsided. The depth of the betrayal was unlike anything she had ever experienced. The person she had built a life with had been actively working against her, and she couldn't ignore the overwhelming emotional pain it caused. She was left questioning everything about their relationship and the future they had planned together. But just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, Faith uncovered something so explosive, so shocking, that it threatened to unravel everything she thought she knew about her marriage. The bombshell revelation left her questioning not just Kenny, but her entire future. Stay tuned as we break down the shocking details of Judge Faith's marriage breakdown, the secrets, the lies, and the ultimate betrayal that has left everyone speechless. What you're about to hear will change everything. The final blow had arrived, the moment that would definitively end their marriage. As the days wore on, Faith couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to Kenny's betrayal than what she had already uncovered. It wasn't just the lies or the emotional manipulation that stung, it was the chilling realization that entire parts of their marriage had been hidden from her, and she was only now beginning to unravel the full truth. The darkest secret came to light when Faith discovered that Kenny had been concealing a crucial part of his life, one that was not only shocking but also deeply damaging to the very foundation of their marriage. This wasn't about small indiscretions or harmless lies. No, this was a revelation of an entirely different magnitude, the kind of truth no one could have predicted. Faith uncovered irrefutable evidence, photos, texts, and damning details of Kenny's affair. This wasn't a brief emotional fling, nor a one-time mistake. It had been ongoing for months, possibly even longer, and its implications were far-reaching, ones Faith hadn't even begun to consider. What made it all the more crushing was the fact that Kenny had cloaked this affair in the guise of a business partnership, making the betrayal even more insidious. As Faith combed through the evidence, it became increasingly clear that this wasn't some fleeting lapse in judgment. Kenny had been fully invested in this affair, emotionally, physically, and for a long time. The realization hit Faith like a ton of bricks. Not only had her husband lied to her for years, but he had also built an emotional and physical connection with someone else while she believed they were building a future together. This wasn't just a betrayal of trust, it was a complete violation of everything they had promised each other. Faith had suspected something was wrong for a while, but never, in her worst nightmares, did she imagine it would be something so severe. The affair was the final piece of the puzzle, shattering the image of the perfect marriage they had so carefully portrayed. She felt as though she had been living in a bubble, one that had now burst beyond repair. The emotional toll was unbearable. Faith had always prided herself on being strong and independent, someone unafraid to stand up for herself or others. But in this moment, the depth of the betrayal left her questioning everything she thought she knew about love, trust, and the sanctity of marriage. As Faith pieced together the full scope of Kenny's betrayal, she reached her breaking point. Years of building what she thought was a solid, loving marriage, overcoming obstacles, facing challenges, and creating a life together, had been shattered. What made this even more devastating wasn't just the affair or the emotional distance growing between them. It was the fact that Kenny's lies weren't confined to the privacy of their home. They were spilling into their public lives, too. For years, they had been the picture-perfect couple, the kind everyone admired. But now, the truth was leaking out, unraveling everything. Faith realized that she was facing a painful decision. She could either stay silent and protect their public image, or expose the truth to the world. For someone whose career had been built on trust and integrity, silence wasn't an option. The weight of the deception was too heavy to carry in silence. The tipping point came when an anonymous source leaked details of their private life to the press, photos, intimate texts, and the sordid truths about the affair. The story spread like wildfire, and suddenly, the world knew what had been going on behind closed doors. Faith was humiliated. Her deepest pain was now on display for everyone to see. The leak was the final blow. No longer could she pretend everything was fine. The betrayal, the lies, the affair, it was all out in the open. Faith knew this was the moment of reckoning, not just for her marriage, but for her very sense of self. She now faced a heartbreaking decision. Should she try to salvage what was left of her marriage, or take the painful step of ending it with Kenny? Could she ever trust him again after everything he had done? Was forgiveness even possible? But what Faith didn't know was that there was still one more twist, One so shocking it would make her question whether any part of her marriage had ever been real. As the media storm surrounding her broken marriage and Kenny's betrayal intensified, Faith began to piece together a more sinister truth. The leak of her private life hadn't been a random incident. It was a meticulously planned attack, orchestrated from within. The anonymous tip to the press wasn't an accident. It was a calculated move designed to destroy her marriage and force her hand. Faith could feel it. This wasn't just a chance leak. The timing was too perfect, the details too precise. This was someone orchestrating the fall of her marriage. But who? Was it a friend? A family member? Someone else entirely? Determined to get answers, Faith quietly launched her own investigation. She began reaching out to her inner circle, questioning everyone she could trust, desperate to uncover the truth. What she uncovered was more dangerous and more unexpected than she ever could have imagined. It didn't take long before Faith discovered a shocking connection between Kenny and someone she never suspected, someone who had a far more personal stake in her marriage than she could have ever known. The web of deception ran far deeper than Faith had ever imagined. And Kenny? He wasn't the only one hiding secrets. Someone she had once trusted, a name she considered a friend, was at the very heart of this conspiracy. As Faith began piecing together the puzzle, she uncovered a shocking truth. The person behind the leak wasn't just trying to hurt her. They were bent on destroying her completely. They knew exactly which buttons to push to inflict maximum emotional and public damage. But the question remained, why? Why would someone so close to her want to do something so cruel? What Faith uncovered next would change everything. The orchestrator of the media storm wasn't just someone close to her, they were someone with a hidden agenda. Their motives? Far more complex than she could have anticipated. This wasn't just about an affair. It was about something bigger, a power struggle, a betrayal of trust, a fight for control. Faith had no idea how deep the manipulation went, but she was about to find out. As Faith dug deeper into the mystery of the leak, her world seemed to unravel. Every conversation with those closest to her only added more layers of confusion and suspicion. The more she investigated, the more she realized the truth was far from simple. This wasn't just about her marriage. It was about power, control, and the dangerous consequences of trusting the wrong people. Faith had always prided herself on being strong and independent, someone who could handle anything life threw her way. But now, as the truth slowly emerged, she was faced with a harsh reality. There were people in her life who had been manipulating her for years. And the person behind the leak was one of them. But who was pulling the strings? Why did they want to destroy her? Faith's search for answers led her to one person she never could have expected. Someone she had trusted, someone who had been by her side for years. This person, someone close to both Faith and Kenny, had played a far larger role in their relationship than anyone had realized. It turned out the affair wasn't the only betrayal Faith had suffered. The deeper Faith dug, the more she uncovered about the web of lies that had been spun around her. And the truth, about who was behind the leak and their true motives, was more devastating than she ever could have imagined. The person responsible wasn't just trying to ruin her marriage. They were trying to destroy her life. As Faith connected the dots, she realized the betrayal went all the way to the top. The person behind the leak had ties to powerful, influential people, connections that went far beyond what Faith could have ever guessed. It was clear now, this wasn't just a personal attack. It was part of something much bigger. In a stunning twist, Faith confronted the person responsible for the leak. It was someone she had never suspected, a trusted confidant who had been playing both sides all along. This person had a personal vendetta against Faith and had been quietly undermining her for years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Now, that moment had arrived. The betrayal hit Faith like a ton of bricks. How could someone she had considered a friend, someone from her inner circle, have been behind the destruction of her marriage and her reputation? The shock and anger were overwhelming. But Faith knew she had no choice but to face the truth head-on. The conversation that followed was intense. The person behind the leak tried to justify their actions, but Faith was done listening to lies. She had been betrayed enough. With the truth finally exposed, Faith was left with a choice: continue playing the victim, letting this situation control her, or take back control of her life and her narrative. In the end, Faith made it clear she wouldn't let anyone dictate her life. She had been through too much, and now it was time for her to rise above the chaos. But even as she took back control, the damage had already been done. And the public fallout was far from over.